I want to start with Iryna Zarutska, which was the murder on the train in Charlotte. So, Dan, the 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee, Iryna, was stabbed to death in an unprovoked attack on Charlotte's light rail last month. Suspect now facing federal charges, sparking national debates on crime and transit safety. There's also an element of a white blonde woman, being killed by a black guy with dreads. As a defense attorney, what's your view on handling these random violent crimes like this?
The first thing that pops into my mind is what kind of mental history does the guy have, right? It's unprovoked, it's random, it's a stranger. I mean, what the hell was going on in this guy's mind to cause him to do that? I mean, there's you can't make any sense of that. It's just such a tragedy. I don't care what color she is or where she's from, but the ironic tragedy, for lack of a better description, is she fled from the Ukraine because it was unsafe, and she literally gets her throat slit from ear to ear on a train in I guess South Carolina. What's also not necessarily from a defense lawyer standpoint, but what the hell were those other people on the train doing? I mean, it just seemed like. And again, it's hard to tell based upon the optics that I've seen who heard what and who could see what, but it looked like nobody gave a shit, right? It looked like nobody could care less. And, again, those without military training or whatever, it is not widely known, but if the knife is sharp enough, you don't feel it for a second, right? I've defended cases where there were barroom fights and my client regrettably, stabbed another person to death, and the other person, based upon the eyewitness account, didn't even feel it for, several seconds. So I don't know if there was an audible scream on her part, but he just walked off like he was, on his way to 7-Eleven to get another drink. But it blows me away. A, that sort of crime happened, and B, that nobody did anything about it.
The video is absolutely horrendous and so sad. When the person who's arrested is charged with, like, let's say, mental health issues, as a criminal defense attorney, what kind of insight do you have on, like, are those typically, like, do they not get charged as people who have, like, let's say, a manifesto? Like, is it sort of like an easier get out of jail free card when you just say, oh, this guy's crazy?
No, not at all. I had one of the most tragic cases I ever had was a young man. It's been, my dad died the same day this happened, so this would have been 15 or so years ago. He was a young man that went to a very elite private school here in Houston. He went to the University of Texas. He went to what's the big festival there that everybody goes to in Austin?
South by Southwest.
He went to South by Southwest. He got some mushrooms or got some hallucinogenics.
Was it ACL or South by Southwest?
ACL. I'm sorry. Thank you. He was a paranoid schizophrenic. Paranoid schizophrenia does not often present itself until your late teens or early 20s. So even though he knew his grandparent was a paranoid schizophrenic, he didn't have any reason to believe that he would be. Taking a hallucinogenic can trigger that.
Wow.
So at 19, 20 years old, here's this kid who was formerly, went to a great private school, made great grades, was doing well in his fraternity, was, a former all-state lacrosse player by all accounts, a wonderful kid. When that hallucinogenic triggered his schizophrenia, he was hallucinating. He was, seeing things, auditory hallucination, visual hallucinations. So his parents put him in Manager here in Houston. He stayed there for some period of time. He got out. He appeared to be progressing well, and his then psychiatrist said, "Well, I think you're good to go. Go back to the University of Texas." And he went home after meeting with that psychiatrist. He went home, saw his mom, who he had a wonderful relationship, slit her throat from ear to ear, murdered her, just right there, completely unprovoked. And ultimately, it was just a horrible tragedy. Side note, so my dad had passed away that morning, right? And I was at the care facility where my dad was at, and they were moving his body. And I was having the usual woulda, shoulda conversations with myself about what I should have said to my dad and all the things I wished I would have done with him and experienced with him. And I was having some, some regret, as any child would do over the death of a parent. But whatever my dad was, and he was not the most charming man, but he was. We couldn't be any more different. But anyway, whatever my dad was, good, bad, or ugly, he was a provider and a hard worker, right? And hard work was his oxygen. And so I'm having these conversations with my dad in my mind, and I get a call from a father whose son had just murdered his wife, right? And I don't. That's a tragedy, right? And I said, yeah, I'll be there, because the son had killed the mother and fled, and he was, they were going to arrest him. So I'm on my way over there, and I'm thinking to myself, that's a shot from above. That is my old man telegraphing me, shut the fuck up. You're not having a bad day. That father and that mother and that son, they're having a bad day. Now go do your job, son. Mm-hmm. Shut the fuck up and quit crying over me. I mean, it was a moment you can't create, can't make up, and can't forget. But that's a windy answer to Aaron's question, or y'all's question, about have you ever experienced a case like that with some severe, breakage or substantial mental health issues. We ultimately were able to convince the prosecutor to an agreed not guilty by reason of insanity, which just never happens. Mm-hmm. But this prosecutor believed that she was doing the right thing, so he went off several years in the Texas Department of Corrections. If you are acquitted in Texas and in most states, the acquittal is based upon reason of insanity, you're not released. You go to a mental treatment facility. And this kid did. He ultimately graduated from there, went to college here in the state of Texas, graduated with honors, now runs a successful business. I mean, his life is a miracle turnaround. But the idea that there are undiagnosed people walking around that do that stuff, and unless they're treated, unless they get the treatment, unless they get the medication, unless they get the education, it'll happen again. So it can happen. A good can come from a horrible mental health breakdown, but not often.
Holy shit, that's a crazy story.
Yeah, it's just one of those moments where, and I'm not terribly spiritual, or I'm terrible at being spiritual, one of the two. But it was just like the heavens opening up and saying, shut the fuck up. You're not having a bad day. Go to work.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. So would that mean that, like, if you do something that's like crazy like that because of underlying health issues, there is room to sort of get a lighter sentence? Well, compared to somebody who has like a motive.
Yeah, it is. It's the so-called McNaughton test, which is you have to demonstrate that your client didn't know the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a heavy standard, right? I mean, just about. So for example, in this case, after he killed his mother, he got in his Jeep and he fled, right? Well, that's an argument that he knew he did something wrong because he left the scene. Mm-hmm. And then when he was pulled over and police recognized and found out who he was, he said, I want to talk to a lawyer, right? Well, those are two pretty good clues that you haven't lost the ability to discern the difference between right and wrong. But his psychiatric history was so significant, and the breakage was so real, and the release from treatment was so recent, and the absolute complete unnecessariness of it all showed that he had a psychological breakdown. He had a break from reality at that time. He believed his mother was some sort of satanic creature, but we had the resources through proper physicians and extensive diagnosis and treatment and an objective prosecutor, for the right result to happen. But it ain't always that so.
Is it fair to say that, like, there should be an argument that people like that and people like the person who stabbed the Iryna on the bus, that they should get just as strict sentencing, because if they've done it in the past, the likelihood that they'll do it again in the future is more than just that your average person?
I mean, I don't think we're in a position to say that. I think every case stands on its own. And look, I don't know what this guy was thinking. I know he has some sort of purported psychological history. He could just be a mean, angry fucking piece of shit. That's equally as likely as he had a break from reality.
You're talking about the killer for the Charlotte.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
DeCarlos, I believe his name is. But I do you feel like, Dan? I want to ask you a few questions as it pertains to this Iryna case specifically. How does immigration status and public outrage affect prosecutions?
Look, we are, let me answer it this way. This country is more divided than it's ever been. And I'm an old motherfucker. I've been here 69 years, and I have never seen anything like the divisiveness that we are experiencing. Never in my life have I seen it. Would I have imagined something like this 15 years ago? There's a donkey in the White House that I'd like to put the tail of all this divisiveness on. That's not fair. But the answer to your question is, I think, Aaron, people will look for any reason to demonize another person, whether it's right or it's wrong. I think immigration status is the default, or race or immigration status is the default demonic, tail or donkey or whatever the metaphor I'm stretching for is. Look, and we're mixing up cases to an extent, but for Trump to come out yesterday and blame the Charlie Kirk tragedy on the radical left, we have no idea who's behind that. I mean, is a default easy guess the radical left? Maybe, but how do they benefit from him just by silencing one guy? To me, that's the what the hell happened there, and who the hell is behind it? But we'll get there in a second, I suppose. But I think immigration status or race or nationality is a huge, easy default driver that everybody wants to blame.
This is a crazy question, but I have to say it. Based off everything you just said, do you feel that we're a lot closer to a civil war than you ever thought would be possible?
I don't know if I'd use the phrase civil war, Tommy, but I think we are a match away from a powder keg that we don't know how it's going to blow up, and it scares the shit out of me, right? And I don't know what's happening. I don't know what to do to stop it. I don't know what to do to even predict it.
Before we fully move into to Charlie Kirk, who again, very top of mind. There's I'm getting updates here. There's more things happening today, which is very interesting. But with Iryna, to close that loop, there's a big element to this of her being white and him being black. The racial tension has also fully, has come to a place, at least in my 32 years, that I haven't seen and experienced. It feels like things are as racist as they've ever been.
I think it's more racist than they've ever been.
I wasn't around for the different segregation times of America's past, but how does that land on you when you have a, let's say, potential client of a different race? Do you see that? Do you feel like those stereotypes matter in the courtroom? Like, does it play? Is that all projection and all online and all just media?
No, I think it's very real, but more than anything, I think it depends upon the venue you're in, right? So Houston, where I live, and the most of my cases, certainly not all, Houston is a very diverse, multicultural city these days. I mean, it is not the city that I was raised in and grew up in, both good and bad, but defending a black or a Hispanic or a Muslim or what have you in Houston, Harris County is way different than what would happen if I defended one in West Texas, in Marfa, or it's a different kettle of fish. So once again, I think it's case specific. I do think those prejudices and those stereotypes are real, but I think in a more multicultural city, they are less problematic than they are in a less multicultural city, right? So I do think that the racial tension is, and again, I was a kid when they had integration in the late 50s and early 60s, so I was around when it happened, but it didn't affect me because we weren't in a diverse community. So my real life experience is at least as much influenced by looking at old television reports on it as it was by the day-to-day experience, because it was just foreign to me. But the racial tension now, it just seems to get worse every day, every year. And back to the point about, a blonde and a black with dreadlocks, is that part of the reason we are looking at that? Of course. Will that likely be an issue in trial? Of course. But is that really what we need to be focusing on? To me, the bigger question is, what the hell is going on in this guy's mind, and why wasn't anybody doing something about it? I mean, it blows me away.
Yeah, I want to end at least with the Iryna, conversation. And again, to our audience, I know there's so much more to cover here, and maybe we will in following episodes. But this bystander debate, is there a legal duty to intervene, or is just a moral duty?
There's no legal duty to intervene unless you were part of the causation of it. Morally, what I would do in that situation as opposed to what I would advise my son or my wife or my grandson to do are two different things, right? I'm going to do whatever I can to stop that guy, to hold him, to make sure he doesn't harm somebody else. But if my son calls me and says, "Dad, this is what happened," I'd say, don't do a fucking thing. Move to the other end of the train, move to the other end of the bus, or whatever. So no, there's no legal duty to intervene. There's just a moral duty. But it didn't look to me like anybody was even. And again, the shots that we're seeing are selected shots, so maybe there were other people in other parts of the train that were upset and moving towards them. It didn't seem like it even registered, or if it did register, nobody seemed to give a shit.